It hit me the moment she walked through the door. I was on the couch, halfway through a bag of chips, the TV humming with some forgettable game show rerun I wasn't really watching. Just another Thursday night, cold and quiet. The kind where time seems to stretch out longer than it should. The kind where the smallest things feel like they echo. She came in laughing. Not a loud, belly-deep laugh, but that short, breathy kind she uses when she's trying to act casual. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, sharp and unfamiliar, like an actress stepping onto a stage. And then it hit me, the scent. It wasn't hers. I know the way she smells. I've known it for years. She used to wear a warm vanilla perfume in the winter. Lately, she'd switched to something floral, light, and a little citrusy. But this wasn't that. This was deeper, heavier. Expensive men's cologne. Not the kind you pick up at a Dr. * store. The kind you notice because it lingers. Not mine. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched her as she shrugged out of her coat. All movements too smooth, too effortless, like they were practiced. She didn't look at me. Not directly. Just tossed her coat over the back of the chair and walked past me like she was in a rush to get away from something. "Hey," I said. My voice sounded flat even to me. She turned around, her smile already halfway formed. "Hey you," she replied. "Sorry I'm late, you know how those work things go. Everyone wants to talk, blah blah." She dropped her bag on the couch and slipped off her heels. That's when I noticed how dressed up she was. Black blouse, form-fitting. Skirt just past the knees. Hair freshly styled. Lipstick. Jewelry. Not over the top, but more than usual. More than necessary. "You look nice," I said, not even trying to hide the question in my tone. She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Had to look presentable. You know how they are at corporate. Appearances." I nodded slowly. My eyes drifted to the bag she had just dropped. The flap had fallen open slightly when it hit the cushion. Inside, a folded receipt peeked out, just enough to show the logo, DeLuca's. Now that made my stomach tighten. DeLuca's isn't a place for coworkers to grab a quick bite. It's the kind of place with candlelight and quiet music and waiters who whisper like it's a library. We went there once. Our 5th anniversary. I still remember how expensive it was. How she'd said it was too much, but smiled anyway when I pulled out her chair. I leaned over and slid the receipt out just enough to see the print. 2 entrees. 1 bottle of red wine. Dessert. $147. I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at the numbers like they might rearrange themselves into something less damning. Her voice broke the silence. Quick. Like she'd rehearsed it. "Oh, that's from tonight. I was out with the team. Client dinner kind of thing. You're being suspicious again." That last part, the way she said it, it wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing. It was dismissive, like she was brushing lint off her shoulder. Her tone had an edge, soft but unmistakable. "You know, you should try trusting me once in a while," she added, throwing in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded slowly, more out of habit than belief. "Yeah, just caught me off guard. That's all." She grabbed the bag, quicker than usual, and walked it down the hall, where I heard the closet door open. That part stood out. She never put her bag in the closet. It always stayed on the hook near the door or sat on the kitchen stool. But now it was tucked away, out of sight. I stared at the empty couch cushion where it had been just seconds earlier. And that's when the silence started to feel different. It's strange how fast you can go from feeling normal to being completely, irrevocably aware. Like waking up in the middle of the night and realizing the house sounds different. Something shifts. Something's off. I sat there on the couch, the TV still playing, but the room felt hollow, like I'd stepped into a version of my life that didn't belong to me anymore. She came back out a few minutes later, hair now in a loose bun, makeup half wiped off, wearing an oversized hoodie, her go-to wind-down outfit. She had changed fast, like she couldn't wait to scrub the evening off herself. Her bare feet patted against the floor as she walked into the kitchen. "I'm starving," she said, opening the fridge. That dinner was all talk and no food. A beat passed. Then 2. "You ate at DeLuca's," I said, not turning around. She froze. Just for a second, but I caught it. That tiny pause like she had to reboot. Yeah, but we split plates. You know how those things are. A bite of this, a sip of that. Mostly just wine and handshakes. She laughed softly, too casually. You're really getting suspicious lately, babe. Babe. She used to only call me that when she wanted something, the remote, or to get the car washed. Hearing it now felt like someone using a word they didn't know the meaning of. She walked past me with a yogurt in hand and curled up on the other end of the couch. Not close, not touching, just near enough to look like nothing was wrong. She turned her eyes to the TV. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just sat there, staring at the screen, not taking in a word of what was being said. My thoughts were too loud. My heart too fast. She made small talk, something about the people at work, a joke about her boss, a complaint about the wine. I nodded in the right places, even chuckled once. But my mind was already working overtime, collecting every little thing I'd missed or had chosen to overlook. Like how lately she always kept her phone face down. How she used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it stayed on her nightstand. Locked. Notifications hidden. Like how she had stopped wearing the necklace I gave her last Christmas. No explanation. Just quietly left it in the drawer. I remember thinking, not for the first time, how subtle betrayal can be. It doesn't always arrive in dramatic confrontations or lipstick on a collar. Sometimes it tiptoes in with cologne that doesn't belong to you and a receipt stuffed into the wrong pocket. She looked over and smiled at me again, this time with a touch of concern. You okay? She asked. I nodded again, slower this time. Yeah, I said. Just tired. She leaned back against the couch, closing her eyes for a moment. Maybe pretending to sleep, or maybe just retreating. I stayed up long after she went to bed. Stared at the dark ceiling of our bedroom, trying to convince myself that I was wrong, that I was reading too much into things, that maybe the cologne was from someone at the office who stood too close in the elevator, that maybe the receipt was innocent. But I couldn't believe that. Not really, because something inside me had clicked. I'd seen the way her eyes had darted when I mentioned the restaurant. I'd heard the tiny change in her voice when she gave that explanation. And I'd felt the distance, the kind you can't measure in inches, but in glances, habits, and instinct. That was the night I stopped being comfortable in my own home. That was the night I realized trust doesn't vanish all at once. It unravels, thread by thread, under the weight of things unsaid. And that was the first time I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for too long. What if she's not mine anymore? She was in the shower when the silence got loud again. I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, arms crossed, listening to the soft spray of water behind the closed door. That faint rhythm, once comforting, now sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone else's home. I stared at the doorknob, half expecting it to turn. Didn't, so I went back to the kitchen. I couldn't sit still. My fingers drummed on the counter. My knee bounced like it had its own pulse. I looked around the room, really looked. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I noticed what was missing. Her wedding ring, gone from its usual spot on the dish near the sink. She used to take it off when she did the dishes, said the soap irritated her skin. I'd see it sitting there, glinting in the morning light. A little symbol that said, I'm still here. Lately, the dish was empty. She claimed it was too tight now. Swells my finger, she said casually one morning, not even looking at me. It's uncomfortable. But she wore bracelets, stacked rings, earrings that weighed more than the band ever did. It was never about comfort. It was about choice. And she had made one. I leaned against the counter, eyes drifting to the calendar on the fridge. 3 weeks ago, she had started skipping our Saturday hikes. Said she had to catch up on work, or just needed a solo day. At the time, I thought maybe I'd been smothering her, that giving her space was the right thing to do. But now I wasn't so sure. I walked to the living room, sat down on the couch, and stared at nothing in particular. My eyes fell on the hallway, the place she'd disappeared down just minutes ago. The same path she took every night. Lately, she'd been coming home later and later. Some nights I'd already be in bed when she walked in, smelling like a world I didn't belong to. I stopped asking where she'd been because the answers never matched the details. Once, she said she had a client dinner. But when I checked her car, the passenger seat was reclined all the way back. Another time, she said she was out with her friend Jenna. I ran into Jenna 2 days later. She never mentioned it. I told myself I was paranoid, that stress was making me see patterns where none existed. But doubt doesn't need evidence, it just needs space. And I had given it plenty. Back when things were good, we used to plan our weekends on Friday nights. Order in, cuddle up, argue about which movie to watch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Now, Friday nights were a waiting game. I'd stay up late, hoping she'd walk through the door early enough to ask how my day was. She never did. She started locking her phone about 2 months ago. Not just the usual lock screen, but full-on disappearing notifications. Face ID only. She said it was for work. Company policy. But then she stopped leaving it on the table altogether. It stayed in her pocket, glued to her side like a secret. One night, I caught a glimpse of a name. Just a first name, nothing suspicious at face value. Logan. I asked who he was and she brushed it off. Just someone from the gym. Relax. I didn't bring it up again. But I remembered the name. It etched itself into the back of my mind like a scar you don't see until it itches. Speaking of the gym, that was another new habit. She used to hate working out. Now she was going for sometimes 5 times a week. Bought new leggings, new shoes, even a smartwatch. I just want to feel better, she'd say. Do something for myself. I supported it, of course I did. I even offered to go with her once. She laughed. Babe, it's kind of my me time. You know? I nodded, smiled, said I understood. But I didn't. Not really. The shower shut off, yanking me back to the present. I heard her shuffling around in the bathroom. The rustle of towels, the squeak of the drawer. I pictured her standing in front of the mirror, wiping steam from the glass, applying lotion, running her fingers through damp hair, going through motions that once meant something. Now it felt like theater. I stayed seated, pretending to scroll on my phone, but all I could see was memory. Little fragments that didn't line up anymore. Like when I caught her humming a song I'd never heard her play. When I asked where she picked it up, she shrugged. Probably the radio. But we shared playlists. She never listened to the radio. That wasn't her. She started keeping a small makeup bag in her car. I found it while grabbing jumper cables. Lipstick, travel-size perfume, compact mirror. It was too curated, too intentional. When I asked about it, she laughed and said, I like to touch up before I head into the office sometimes. She doesn't work in an office. She works remote. Has for years. The little lies are worse than the big ones. Because they feel almost harmless, justifiable. Easy to ignore. Until they start piling up. Until the version of her that lives in your head doesn't match the one sitting across from you at dinner. I used to know her. Every quirk, every eye roll, every smile before it even reached her lips. Now I felt like I was trying to read a book written in a language I'd forgotten. She still looked like her. She still sounded like her. But the essence, the part that once felt so intertwined with mine, was fading. Or hiding. She came out of the bedroom in pajamas, toweling her hair. She smiled at me, just a quick flash, then headed to the kitchen. Her back was to me, but I could hear her rummaging in the cabinet, humming that same unfamiliar tune under her breath. I stared at her for a moment, at the way she moved, at the curve of her shoulders, at the absence of the ring on her hand as she grabbed a glass from the shelf. She didn't notice me watching. She never does anymore. I was thinking we could go to that brunch place on Sunday, I said, testing the waters. She paused. Oh, this Sunday? Yeah, we haven't gone in a while. She took a beat too long to answer. I think I have plans already. Melissa invited me to a yoga thing. Yoga. Another new hobby. Another place she goes alone. Another excuse. Ah, I said. Another me-time thing. She turned slightly, eyebrow raised. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said quickly. Just feels like you're doing a lot of solo stuff lately. She sipped her water. I'm just trying to find balance, you know? I nodded. Sure. but I didn't feel balanced. I felt like I was on a seesaw, sitting across from someone who kept jumping off when I wasn't looking. That night, she went to bed early, claimed she was tired. I stayed up again, same as the night before. And the one before that. The house felt hollow. My thoughts bounced off the walls. I kept trying to remember when things had shifted, when her laughter stopped sounding genuine, when our silences stopped being comfortable. I opened my laptop, not for anything in particular, just to escape. But my fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Then, without really thinking, I clicked through old photo folders. Vacations, holidays, birthdays, smiles. All the little **TS of a life that used to feel whole. She used to send me photos during the day, of her lunch, of the dog at the park, of her in bed holding up peace signs with messy hair. I hadn't gotten one of those in months. I hadn't noticed. Not really. But now the absence felt like a hole in the floor. I stared at our anniversary picture, year 5, standing outside DeLuca's, the same place from the receipt. She had leaned into me that night, her head against my chest. Her smile was real. Tonight, that smile never showed up. I shut the laptop, got up, and walked to the hallway. The bedroom door was cracked slightly. I could hear her breathing. Soft, steady, asleep, peaceful. I stood there for a long time, not going in, just watching the shadows shift across the floor, wondering if she dreamt of someone else now, wondering if I'd already been replaced in more ways than I could count. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't even get angry. I just stood there and realized the version of her I knew wasn't coming back. And the version standing in her place was already halfway gone. It happened on a Tuesday night. Not a special date. Not an anniversary. Just a regular evening where the weight of my doubts finally became heavier than my hesitation. She had gone out again. Late yoga, she called it. And I was alone in the house with only the soft hum of the refrigerator and my own heartbeat for company. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my laptop. For weeks, maybe months, I had been collecting small clues like fallen threads. The cologne, the receipt, the ring, the gym bag, the new passwords. All of it added up to something, but until now it was still blurry, still deniable. Tonight, though, my hands trembled with a sense of purpose. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband anymore. Her laptop was sitting on the dining room table. She'd left it there earlier, still plugged in, lid closed but not locked. I had seen her typing on it before she left. Said she was finishing a proposal. The moment I lifted the lid, the screen blinked awake and her desktop appeared. No password prompt. No lock screen. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure the neighbors could hear it. I told myself I wouldn't dig, that I'd just glance at her calendar, maybe her emails, something simple. But when the truth is sitting one click away, curiosity stops being curiosity and becomes survival. I opened her email first. At first it was all normal work correspondence, promotions, newsletters. But then my eyes caught a folder labeled drafts. She never used drafts. She's the kind of person who writes a message and sends it immediately. My gut twisted as I clicked. Inside were 5 unsent emails. My hands hovered above the trackpad as if opening them would set off an alarm. I clicked the first one. Last night was better than I could imagine. It began. My breath caught. She had attached a photo, low light, hotel room wallpaper I didn't recognize. Her reflection in a mirror wearing a dress I had never seen before. In her hand, a glass of champagne. Her eyes weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at someone standing just outside the frame. I scrolled further down. "He thinks I'm at yoga again," she had typed. "We have to be careful. But I can't stop thinking about you." No signature. No name. But she didn't need one. I clicked the second draft. "I'm counting the hours until Friday. Room 214 again?" Another photo. This time just her feet in new heels, resting on a bedspread that wasn't ours. The third email was shorter. "Thank you for making me feel alive again." My stomach lurched. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't misunderstanding. It was a double life spelled out in black and white. I sat back, hands over my mouth. The air felt heavy, thick, like I was underwater. My chest ached. I stared at the screen, reading the words again and again. as if repetition would change them. I opened her photo library next. She must have been sloppy or confident, or maybe she thought I'd never dare look. There were folders hidden in plain sight, dates as titles innocuous at first glance. Inside were **TS of hotel rooms, half-empty wine glasses, selfies of her in outfits I'd never seen leave the house. In one, she was holding a key card with the hotel's logo. In another, she was sitting on a balcony at night, city lights behind her. It was like flipping through someone else's life, a stranger's, and yet it was her face, her smile, her body angled toward a camera held by someone who wasn't me. The worst part wasn't even the images. It was her words. "I needed this," one message read. "I can't go back to just pretending at home." Another, "He's starting to suspect. I have to be more careful." I slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a G**NSH**T. For a moment I just sat there, fingers pressed against my temples, breathing in and out through my teeth. There it was, the proof I had been both dreading and needing. Not just suspicion, not just paranoia. Facts. Proof that every gut feeling had been a warning, not a delusion. I stood and began pacing the kitchen, each step feeling like it belonged to someone else. My mind flicked back to every conversation we'd had in the past few months, every excuse, every strange smile. How she had laughed off my concerns, turned them into jokes, made me feel like I was overreacting. How easily she had done it. I thought about the ring she no longer wore, the weekends she worked late, the perfume that had vanished from the bathroom, replaced by cosmetics I'd never seen. I thought about how she had shifted our lives inch by inch so that she could build another one alongside it like two parallel tracks. And now I was standing between them, realizing I didn't belong on either anymore. I sat back down and opened the laptop again, this time with a kind of grim focus. I took out my phone and began photographing everything, the drafts, the photos, the hotel keycard images, the dates, every single piece of evidence. My hands steadied as I worked, each click of the camera a small act of reclaiming control. By the time I finished, my phone's storage was nearly full. I closed the laptop once more gently this time, and pushed it back to the exact spot she had left it. If she noticed anything off, she might grow careful. And I wasn't done yet. I sat there in the dim kitchen light, staring at the blank wall. It was almost funny, not the situation but the stillness of it. Like the world hadn't noticed my life had just shifted on its axis. I could hear her car pulling into the driveway, the crunch of gravel under tires. My heart lurched, but my face stayed calm. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned off the kitchen light. By the time she walked in, I was at the sink rinsing a glass, playing the role of the man she thought she was deceiving. She smiled at me, soft and casual. "Hey, you're still up," she said. "Yeah," I replied evenly. "Couldn't sleep." She walked over, kissed me lightly on the cheek, the faint scent of that same cologne clinging to her hair. "Long class tonight. I'm exhausted." I nodded. "Go get some rest." She smiled again, relief flickering behind her eyes like she'd passed a test. She headed down the hallway, humming under her breath, the same unfamiliar tune. I stayed where I was, watching her shadow disappear. And that was the moment I knew. Not suspected, not feared. Knew. I wasn't living with my wife anymore. I was living with someone playing the part. And the mask had finally cracked. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in bed beside her, listening to the shallow rise and fall of her breath, watching the way the moonlight danced across the ceiling like it had nothing to answer for. I stared upward as if the truth would be written there, spelled out in light and shadow, something cosmic to justify how small I suddenly felt. She turned over in her sleep once, murmuring something I didn't catch. Her hand brushed my arm. I didn't move, couldn't. I just let the moment pass like wind through a cracked window. That was the night I stopped seeing her as my wife. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was more like a sharp, clinical awareness that the person I'd been sharing my life with had stopped existing without telling me. She had been replaced by someone else. Someone wearing her face and mimicking her habits well enough to fool anyone who wasn't looking too closely. But I had looked. Now I couldn't unsee it. In the morning, I made coffee like I always did. Poured her cup first, left mine black. She came downstairs in one of my old hoodies, a favorite of hers. Hair messy, looking exactly like the girl I had once adored. She kissed my cheek like she hadn't spent the night dreaming of someone else. "You're up early," she said with a soft smile, like everything was normal. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She nodded, reached for the coffee, and sipped. Perfect. You always make it better than I do." I gave her a small smile. It was easier to play along now that I knew it was all a performance. I was just another actor in a poorly written play, waiting for the curtain to fall. After she left for a meeting, I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account. I'd never paid close attention to it before. Not because I didn't care, but because I trusted her. That was the old me. The version that thought trust was love's default, not a luxury you had to earn and protect. The charges were all there, hiding in plain sight. Boutique hotel bookings under her name. Most of them during team offsites or wellness retreats. Sometimes just for a night, sometimes for two. Restaurants we'd never been to together. Charges for wine, room service, flower deliveries. Things we hadn't shared, but she had clearly enjoyed. I cross-referenced the hotel names with her excuses. One Friday she'd claimed to be visiting her sister. That same night, a room booked downtown at a place called the Astoria. Another weekend, she told me she was going to a yoga retreat 2 towns over. I found 3 consecutive nights charged to a beachfront inn, complete with a couple spa package. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time lapse. This was a pattern. A life built on structure and deception, carefully maintained like a second home she visited when I wasn't looking. I pulled up her calendar next. She shared it with me months ago. It had seemed like a way to stay organized back then, a modern couple's convenience. Now I saw it for what it was, a shield. It was filled with fake events, empty placeholders, color-coded lies. One entry caught my attention. Team strategy dinner, 7 p.m., DeLuca's, the same restaurant from the receipt I found on her first suspicious night. Another entry, personal retreat, no service. That lined up with a hotel booking 45 minutes away. I clicked back month by month, watching the entries grow more frequent, more confident. As if she knew I'd never look. Until now, I started saving **TS. Her calendar, her charges, the booking receipts. I created a folder, hid it under a generic name, and backed it up to a separate drive. I didn't know exactly what I was building yet, but it felt like a case. Like I was preparing for a trial she hadn't realized had **N. Later that night, I asked her how her meeting went. She smiled, pouring a glass of wine. "Exhausting. You know how they talk in circles." I nodded. "So who was there?" She blinked. Your meeting. Who else was there?" "Oh, just the usual. Kara, Dev, a couple of clients." I sipped my own drink. "And where'd you meet?" She paused. At the office. Then we walked to Tapo." Funny. No charge from Tapo on the card today. Nothing on Venmo. And Kara had posted a photo earlier of herself at home, cuddling her dog. I saw it while she was in the shower. Time-stamped and everything. "Cool," I said. "Glad it went well." She relaxed, smiled wider, and leaned against the counter. "You're being sweet. Suspicion's not a good color on you." That line, "suspicion's not a good color on you," was her favorite lately. She used it like punctuation. Whenever I asked a question she didn't like, she'd drape that phrase over it like a silk scarf. Stylish, deflective, meaningless. The next day, I decided to get more precise. I called the hotel. "Hi, yes," I said in my most casual voice. "I'm following up on a stay under the name, her name, from last weekend. We're just trying to track down a missing phone charger. Room 214, I believe?" The clerk on the other end was helpful, cheerful. "Let me check. Yes, we had her name here. Friday through Sunday. Room 214. No charger turned in, though. Sorry about that." "No worries," I said. "Thanks so much." And just like that, my memory matched her message in the email draft. Room 214. The mask was fully off now. I didn't need to catch her in the act. She had already written her confession, hidden in drafts, bank statements, and calendar entries. I just had to read it. That night, I lay awake again while she slept beside me. The irony of her peaceful breathing made my skin crawl. I used to find comfort in that sound. Now it felt like a lullaby composed by a stranger. I turned toward her and whispered something under my breath. She didn't hear me. She didn't stir. I whispered it again, this time louder. "You're not who I thought you were." Nothing. Just steady, silent breathing. The next morning, she was chipper again. She asked if I wanted to grab brunch. Said she'd been feeling disconnected lately and wanted to reconnect. I watched her closely. The way she talked with her hands, how she leaned across the table, her voice suddenly softer, warmer. She was good. I'll give her that. If I didn't already know the truth, I might have believed the act. But the truth doesn't unstick once it's in your hands. It stays. It stings. And it sees through everything. She reached for my hand as the check arrived. I let her take it. Let her believe we were fine. That everything was normal. That the show could go on. Because what she didn't know was that I had already begged asterisk and rewriting the script. After that brunch, I stopped asking questions. Not because I had found peace, far from it, but because I no longer needed answers. I already had them. All of them. The calm I showed was just the sound of bridges burning quietly behind my eyes. She mistook it for forgiveness or maybe fatigue, but it was strategy. A controlled silence that gave me space to prepare for the exit she didn't know was coming. I started the next morning. While she was on a call in the home office, I opened a new checking account in my name only. Quiet, discreet, in a credit union across town. I transferred money little by little, amounts small enough not to trigger suspicion. Groceries, gas, routine transactions easy to bury. Over a week I moved what I needed. Rent, deposit, emergency cushion. I then rented a small apartment, 1 bedroom, nothing fancy, nothing sentimental. Just mine. It was on the east side, tucked into a row of forgettable beige buildings no one would think to look twice at. The leasing office required proof of employment, so I sent in pay stubs and answered all their questions like I was any other man trying to disappear into the background. They gave me the keys that Friday. I stood alone in the empty unit, staring at the blank white walls, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and quiet. It wasn't a home yet, but it was a start. A clean page in a different book. Back at the house, she had no idea. She'd been in good spirits lately, humming more, smiling often, cooking more dinners like she was trying to earn back some version of herself. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand while watching TV or lean her head on my shoulder, and I would sit still, nodding, murmuring yes to things I wasn't hearing. She thought I was exhausted. She wasn't wrong. But exhaustion wasn't the only reason for my silence. I needed her to feel like she was still in control, because people who feel like they're winning don't look behind them. In the meantime, I continued gathering what I had started. I organized everything on an old phone I kept in my dresser drawer. One I'd used years ago and reactivated under a prepaid plan. That phone became my archive. I stored *TS of her draft emails, saved photos of the hotel bookings, receipts from the shared account, and even clips from security footage I'd pulled from a nearby gas station she used. Footage that showed her car parked for hours while she claimed to be in another town. The phone stayed on airplane mode most of the time. No cloud syncing. No location sharing. No chance of her accidentally spotting a notification. It was a digital vault, and every day I added more to it. By the 3rd week, I had everything. I even had the messages she deleted. I used recovery software on her old laptop, one she rarely touched anymore, and found fragments she'd erased. Texts to someone named Jay. I couldn't confirm the name, but the tone said everything I needed to know. "I miss you already. Next time, no guilt." He has no clue. One of them ended with, "I think he's emotionally checked out anyway. We're just playing house at this point." That one stuck with me. Playing house. Like the last 10 years of my life had been a pretend game for her. Furniture and routines and Sunday grocery runs reduced to nothing more than stage props. After reading that, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I stopped asking myself if I was overreacting. I stopped wondering what I could have done differently. The truth was already carved in stone. All that was left was to walk away before I turned to dust trying to make sense of it. I met with a lawyer 2 days later. Quiet office. Neutral walls. A man who'd seen it all. I showed him the files, the evidence, the hotel receipts, and he barely blinked. "Do you want to go quietly or scorched earth?" he asked. "Quiet," I replied, "but with teeth." He nodded and laid out the plan. No need to announce it, no dramatic confrontations. Just serve the papers and let the facts speak for themselves. "She'll probably try to turn it around on you," he warned. "That's how these things go. But from what I'm seeing, she doesn't have much room to negotiate." "Let her spin it," I said. "I've already lived through her fiction." He nodded again. We signed papers. We scheduled everything. Then came the folder. I printed every piece of evidence, no commentary, just documents. *TS, emails, hotel bookings, timestamps. I slipped it all into a blue folder. Simple, plain. I didn't want drama. I wanted facts. The final thing I added was a photo. A printout of the mirror selfie she had taken in the hotel, holding a glass of champagne, that half smile on her lips like she was floating in a different world. On the back, I wrote the date and just one line. "This is when you stopped being mine." I sealed the folder and tucked it into my desk drawer. I wasn't sure when I'd give it to her, only that I would. Over the next few days, I slowly started moving things to the new place. Nothing big, just the essentials. A few shirts, my passport, extra toiletries. I told her I was donating stuff or cleaning out old junk. She nodded, distracted, usually scrolling through her phone. She never asked questions. She never noticed the weight shifting. One night, she came home with takeout and my favorite wine. She lit a candle. She played our old playlist. I watched her laugh over dinner, talking about a podcast she liked, pausing to offer me bites with her fork like she had rediscovered in *Macy. She talked about maybe taking a trip together in the fall. I nodded along, letting her believe in the illusion, because her behavior wasn't love. It was control. It was an attempt to hold the power just a little longer. Maybe she sensed I was drifting, or maybe she was just trying to cover her tracks better. But it didn't matter. I wasn't coming back. I stopped sleeping beside her. Said I was dealing with insomnia. Slept on the couch. She didn't protest. Maybe part of her was relieved. Or maybe she didn't want to get too close to a fuse she knew was already lit. The night before I planned to leave, I sat in the living room long after she had gone to bed. The lights were off. The folder was packed in my bag. My keys were in my pocket. I looked around the space we had shared. The couch we'd picked out together. The dented coffee table she used to rest her feet on. The wall where our anniversary photo still hung. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was just done pretending. At some point in betrayal, grief gives way to distance. A quiet, sober kind of peace that comes when you know nothing more can be salvaged. That's where I was now. Ready. By the morning, I'd be gone. She smirked as she said, "I'm going to dinner with another man." Like it was a test. But I didn't react. I calmly placed the folder on the table, looked her in the eye and said, "I already know everything." Her face went pale. No yelling, no drama, just silence. I packed my things and walked out the door. For the first time in months, I felt in control. She lost her grip the moment I stopped playing along. A week later, I was living alone. No perfume in the air. No lies waiting behind a smile. The silence felt clean, peaceful, not lonely. She didn't apologize for cheating, just for getting caught. And that said everything. I started rebuilding from zero, brick by honest brick. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder. The storm had passed. I was free.